Welcome, curious minds. Have you ever looked at the four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and noticed those subtle differences? You know, the kind of variations that make you stop and think, wait, did that really happen exactly the same way in all accounts?
Oh, absolutely. For centuries, scholars, theologians, believers too, have grappled with these apparent discrepancies, trying to figure out how narratives about the same events can sometimes present details, sequences, even reactions differently. It's a real challenge.
Right. It often leads to questions about, well, the absolute truthfulness of the texts themselves.
Indeed. And traditional interpretations usually focus on, diverse perspectives. The idea that each evangelist had a unique audience, a different emphasis. So they're seen as complementary lenses on one single historical truth.
Okay, that's the standard view.
But what if? What if those differences weren't just about perspective or even literary choices? What if they pointed to something much bigger, like maybe distinct realities, suggesting the truth itself might be multi-layered?
That's exactly the really fascinating premise we're diving into today. We're taking a deep dive into well, let's be honest, highly speculative model from independent scholar Stephen Work. It's this imaginative apologetic offering a truly out-of-the-box way to reconcile the Gospels. Instead of trying to force-fit everything into one perfect timeline, Work proposes something like a multiverse journal approach, a cosmic, multi-layered framework.
It's essentially redefining gospel truth beyond just perspective shifts. It's suggesting entirely distinct realities, each governed by different levels of grace.
Wow. Okay.
And it's really crucial to understand, though, that this model, while speculative, consciously tries to ground itself in a specific tradition. It aims to resolve these perceived paradoxes without contradicting traditional Catholic magisterium. That's key.
So it's not trying to rewrite doctrine.
No, not at all. It's more like an intellectual exercise. It's designed to show that apparent contradictions don't have to undermine truth. Maybe we just need a grander conceptual framework to grasp God's reality, showing possibilities, really.
Yeah. Okay, so our mission today then is to unpack Stephen Work's Jacob's Ladder cosmology of the Gospels. This model envisions a multi-layered creation, like stacked realities, where Christ's redemptive work happens across different levels of existence. We'll explore how this suggests each gospel account, despite all the variations, can be wholly and absolutely true, but within its own specific context.
Within its own ontological context, yes. Its own unique layer of reality operating under, well, different spiritual conditions.
We'll examine the whole structure of this cosmology from Jacob's Ladder as a literal hierarchy to the soul's journey within it.
Navigating these levels of grace.
Yeah.
Right? And we'll delve into Christ's really unique, recursive, incarnational work across these different realities.
Right.
And then look at the, frankly, surprising implications for salvation, judgment, our ultimate destiny.
It really forces you to stretch your imagination, doesn't it? Thinking about the sacred texts in this cosmic way.
Absolutely. It promises some aha moments, definitely a lot to ponder.
It challenges conventional views, but as you said, aims to stay rooted in traditional Catholic theology, even while pushing boundaries.
Exactly. Get ready for a mind-bending journey.
Okay, let's unpack this common challenge first. The one that's puzzled people for ages. These observable variations across the four Gospels. You read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John side by side, and, well, things don't always line up perfectly. Not in a strictly literal, chronological way.
Right. The sequence of events might differ. Maybe the exact wording in a dialogue isn't identical.
Yeah, or even details around big moments like miracles or teachings. Subtle distinctions, but they're there.
Think about the Last Supper accounts or the resurrection appearances. The core is there, but the specifics, who was present, the order of things, the exact words can shift.
And beyond just details, the way the public reacts to Jesus, that can feel different too, right?
Definitely. One gospel might show, widespread acceptance, while another depicts more skepticism or even hostility for seemingly similar events.
And while scholars often harmonize these as, like you said, complementary perspectives or theological agendas,
Which are valid approaches.
right, they are. But for someone seeking just one perfectly consistent historical account, those differences can still raise questions, can't they?
They absolutely can, and that's what makes Stephen Work's approach so fascinating. He's attempting an apologetic, a defense of the faith, but doing it through this incredibly creative, expansive blend of theology and even inspiration from modern scientific ideas like multiverse concepts.
So he's not just explaining away the differences.
No, not at all. He's not trying to force a strained harmonization either. He's proposing a grander framework, a whole cosmic view of reality itself, and doing it, crucially, within the bounds of traditional Catholic magisterium, which holds Scripture as inerrant.
So his goal is to show that all four Gospels can be true without error, even with the variations.
Precisely. He's asking us to consider that maybe the truth is just far bigger, more complex than a single linear historical story can hold.
Okay, and the key to his solution.
No.
It ties into divine grace.
Exactly. Work proposes this concept where each gospel book is ordered based on the amount of grace God fills that specific reality with.
Not metaphorically, but like a real spiritual atmosphere.
That's the idea in his model, yes. A measurable, palpable spiritual quality. And this amount of grace directly reflects how open people in that reality are to Jesus' message.
How receptive they are.
So based on that, he orders the Gospels.
Yeah.
From the lowest portrayal of popular support, which he equates with the least grace, up to the highest support, representing the most grace.
It's very systematic. So let's walk through that ordering. He starts with John's Gospel as having the lowest popular support.
Correct. In Work's view, John portrays the lowest public following. The crowd reactions are described as most selective, deeply divided.
Right. You see Jesus having these deep individual conversations, like with Nicodemus or the Samaritan woman.
Exactly. And the crowds, they're often shown arguing, demanding signs, not really getting who he is.
So in this reality, the message hits individuals more than the masses.
That's the implication. A lower ambient level of grace means broad, communal acceptance is just less common. It's a tougher spiritual environment.
Almost like belief requires a very personal, maybe isolated, deep commitment against the grain.
Precisely. Making mass movements of faith less likely there. It highlights that hard-won individual journey.
Okay, so that's John. Moving up the ladder of grace, where does Mark fit in?
Mark, in this model, represents a reality with moderate crowds. The reactions here are often driven by astonishment and fear, which leads to public support that's, well, ultimately unstable.
Like when people are amazed by miracles but then tell him to keep quiet, or the crowd turning on him later.
Exactly, that kind of thing. There's awe, but it's maybe superficial, not deeply rooted in understanding. It's fleeting.
Mark's Jesus feels very powerful, almost overwhelming sometimes.
Yes, and people react with that mix of wonder and apprehension. Work suggests this reality has more grace than John's, but conviction is still easily swayed. Fear can turn the tide quickly.
So it shows how external pressures can erode faith in a less grace-filled reality, even with powerful divine signs.
Right. It illustrates that instability.
Then next up we have Luke's Gospel.
Yes, Luke. This gospel, in Work's model, shows a broad and diverse appeal, characterized by strong sympathy from the common people.
Luke often shows Jesus as this compassionate figure, right, attracting big crowds, including outcasts.
Exactly. The marginalized, those who respond with genuine interest and admiration. Think of the throngs following him, eager for parables or healing.
So here, the idea is that grace is more abundant.
Correct. Leading to wider acceptance, a general resonance with the message. People are more receptive, listening eagerly, responding positively. Even if their understanding isn't always, complete or fully reverent, there's a communal openness.
Like a softer spiritual ground.
That's a good way to put it. Signifying a more pervasive grace, making the message more accessible to a wider audience, moving beyond just astonishment to real human connection.
Okay, John, Mark, Luke, that leaves Matthew. Is that the highest level in this ordering?
According to Work's proposal for the canonical Gospels, yes. Matthew depicts the largest and most reverent public response. It clearly highlights Jesus' messianic authority.
Right, Matthew has these grand scenes like the Sermon on the Mount with vast crowds.
And people are often shown falling at his feet, recognizing his power, his divine status.
So this reality, Work suggests, has the most grace.
Yes, allowing for widespread recognition of his divinity and a more stable, committed following. The crowds aren't just sympathetic or amazed. They're reverent.
They acknowledge his authority, embrace his teachings more firmly.
Exactly. In this reality, the divine truth is more readily perceived and accepted on a grander scale. The spiritual environment is just more open to the Messiah.
So if we put this all together, what's the big takeaway for how we read the Gospels?
Well, the real breakthrough Work is proposing here is a way to affirm every single word as absolutely true. Not by forcing them into one timeline, but by expanding the very idea of historical reality itself.
It's a fundamental shift, not just different perspectives, but different grace-governed realities.
Precisely. It's a different way to approach scriptural inerrancy, suggesting a much larger divine canvas.
But it's important to remember the nature of this model, right? You mentioned it's speculative.
Absolutely vital. Work himself is explicit. It's an imaginative apologetic. He says it's not proposed as doctrine, and it doesn't seek to replace traditional Catholic teaching on the singular historical passion, death, and resurrection.
That's a really crucial distinction. He's not denying the traditional view.
No, he's proposing a framework that could potentially accommodate the variations within that traditional understanding without creating a contradiction.
So its purpose is just to illustrate one possible way the differences could be reconciled.
Exactly. To show that no contradiction exists to undermine the truth of the sacred texts. It's a thought experiment, demonstrating logical and theological possibility.
Which raises an interesting question for us, for you listening. How do we hold something as true within a framework that's also openly speculative?
It encourages a different kind of thinking, doesn't it? Where exploring possibilities can actually strengthen faith. It suggests that the lack of a perfect, single, harmonized narrative doesn't automatically mean contradiction. It might just mean we haven't grasped the full, multi-layered scope of God's reality yet.
Okay, so at the heart of this whole cosmology is Jacob's ladder, but not just the dream from Genesis.
No, he reinterprets it quite radically. Work envisions it as a literal vertical hierarchy of distinct realities.
Like actual separate universes or dimensions stacked on top of each other.
That's the idea. Imagine a grand cosmic staircase stretching from God's immediate presence all the way down to realms with less and less grace.
Each step down is a new universe, further from the divine source.
Precisely.
So when we talked about ontological context earlier,
Uh-huh.
maybe give us the simplest way to think about that for these different levels, like the explain it like I'm five version.
Okay, good question. Think of it like this. A perspective is like different camera angles on the same football game. Sideline, stands, overhead, still one game. But Work's model is saying it's more like 4 different football games happening at the same time, each with its own field, players, crowd, rules, slightly unique.
Ah, okay.
And each game is perfectly real and true within its own stadium. The ontological context is basically the specific rules and conditions of that particular stadium or reality.
And the main rule that changes here is the amount of divine grace.
Exactly. That's the core differentiator between the levels in this model.
So expanding on that, each lower level has less grace.
Progressively less. Yes, a diminished measure of divine grace. Work even throws out some numbers more as illustrations than exact science, suggesting the highest level near God is 100% grace. Then maybe the next is around 33%, then 11%, 3.7%, and so on, decreasing with each step down.
Wow, that's a steep drop-off. What are the implications of living in a reality with, say, only 11% grace?
Well, the implications are profound. The source material says in these lower realms, things like sin, moral disorder, and alienation from divine truth become increasingly normalized.
Normalized, just part of the background noise.
Almost. These realities are described as ghosted echoes of the higher, more grace-filled ones. Imagine the very atmosphere of truth and virtue being diluted. It changes everything. It becomes harder to see the good, harder to choose it. Moral disorder takes root more easily.
So it's not just about individual choices, but the whole environment pushes against virtue.
That's the idea. The spiritual fabric is thinner, less potent. The path of righteousness is more difficult. The pull of sin more pervasive, like living in a constant spiritual fog compared to the clear light higher up.
Okay, this is where it gets really personal and maybe a bit unsettling for the individual soul. The model talks about a consequence for committing a grave or mortal sin. What happens then?
It posits something quite dramatic. A metaphysical death leading to an instantaneous descent to the next lower level on Jacob's ladder.
Instantaneous. So not just spiritual separation, but an actual shift in the reality you inhabit.
That's the proposal. A literal, immediate change in your ontological context. The soul continues its life, but now in a place with less grace, where moral disorder prevails.
And it gets stranger. The sin itself becomes woven into the fabric of that lower realm. What does that even mean?
It suggests the environment itself reflects the moral failing, almost like the reality adjusts to resonate with the sin that caused the fall.
So if you fall because of pride, you land in a reality where pride is maybe more common, more accepted, harder to resist.
That seems to be the implication. It's not just that you've lost grace. You've literally been dropped into a new, harsher reality that mirrors your sin.
What would that feel like? It sounds terrifying.
Well, imagine the spiritual equivalent of suddenly being in a vacuum without a spacesuit, or going from a lush garden to a barren desert instantly. The spiritual air, the light, the moral landscape, it all changes. Supports you took for granted are diminished.
And the temptations that maybe felt manageable before,
might now feel overwhelming because that ambient grace buffering you is significantly reduced. The sin being woven in suggests the environment is a constant, nagging reminder, making it harder to find the way back.
It's a very stark view of sin's consequences. Immediate, almost physical.
It definitely gives it a different weight, a different lens.
But it's not all doom and gloom, right? Is there a way back up the ladder? What about redemption?
Yes, absolutely. There's a path for reascent, and it's rooted firmly in traditional Catholic sacraments.
Okay, how does that work?
If a fallen soul shows perfect contrition, that deep sorrow motivated by love for God, not just fear, or validly receives the sacrament of penance, which is confession, then that soul may be restored to its original level.
So confession or perfect contrition can literally pull you back up a level of reality.
That's the idea, a metaphysical upward shift through forgiveness. But the model adds another layer. It says, complete restoration of his full spiritual vitality occurs only when the soul receives the Holy Eucharist in a proper Catholic Mass.
Ah, so the Eucharist is key for full restoration at that level.
Exactly. It fully revivifies the soul with the grace appropriate to its level.
Wow. That really elevates the importance of the sacraments, doesn't it? Not just spiritual healing, but literal realignment with a higher reality.
It absolutely does. It ties individual actions, sin, contrition, penance, receiving the Eucharist directly to the experiential reality the soul inhabits.
So when you reascend, you're not just forgiven, you're metaphysically transported back to a reality with a richer spiritual atmosphere?
Where temptations are less pervasive, the good is easier to perceive.
Yes. It does raise that question, though. How does continuing life in a lower reality square with traditional ideas of spiritual death?
It's definitely a different perspective, isn't it? It frames spiritual death not as cessation, but as a kind of ontological demotion, a continuation of life under much harsher, grace-deprived conditions, while still affirming the power of grace and sacraments to restore. Hashtag tag 4, Christ's incarnational work across the multiverse ladder.
Okay, now we get to maybe the most profound and honestly mind-bending part of this whole model. We've got this multi-layered reality, Jacob's ladder. How does Christ fit in? How does his redemptive work function across all these levels?
This is where work proposes something truly expansive. He suggests that Jesus Christ, because of his infinite divine nature, is posited to have fully incarnated on each level of Jacob's ladder.
Fully incarnated, meaning a separate incarnation on every level.
That's the proposal. His divine essence manifesting tangibly, uniquely, across every single one of these realities, not just one event rippling out.
So each incarnation involves a complete life, from conception through ministry, passion, resurrection, but tailored to that specific level.
Exactly. Tailored uniquely to the spiritual conditions of that particular level.
So the Jesus of Matthew's gospel in that high grace reality with reverent crowds.
Distinct from the Jesus of John's gospel in that lower grace reality with more divided faith.
And this isn't just about the storyteller's focus. It's about the actual historical events as they happened in those different realities.
That's the core of the claim. Different, yet equally true historical realities of his existence and mission, perfectly adapted to the grace levels of each specific universe or level.
Wow. Okay, so what does that mean for the Gospels we actually have? Matthew, Mark, Luke, John.
Well, according to this model, they aren't the only accounts. They're understood as records of Christ's work, specifically in the 4 higher levels that are closer to God than the level of one's conception.
The level of one's conception. That's an interesting anchor point. So our Gospels relate to realities relatively close to where we, or our mothers, began.
That seems to be the idea, yes. Establishing a kind of personal reference point within this vast cosmology.
And what about levels further down the ladder?
The model suggests that for those conceived in realities, say, 4 or more levels apart from the canonical records, then alternative sets of gospel records would manifest. Divinely inspired records, perfectly suited for those specific contexts.
So potentially an infinite number of Gospels, each true for its own level.
That's the staggering implication, each one being the definitive and true account of Christ's redemptive work at that level.
It's a powerful way to reaffirm the inerrancy of the Gospels we do have, isn't it? By giving them their own distinct, equally true domains.
Exactly. It resolves apparent contradictions not by harmonization, but by expanding the canvas upon which truth unfolds. A canvas as vast as this multi-layered cosmos.
Okay, so if Christ is incarnating on each level, how does the saving part work? The sacrifice, the resurrection, how does that happen across all these realities?
This is where work uses the metaphor of the phoenix. It's quite vivid.
The bird reborn from ashes.
Precisely. Just like the Phoenix cycle, Christ's life, sacrifice, and resurrection recur on each level.
Recur. So it's not a one-time event impacting all levels.
No, in this model, it's a dynamic, recurring nature. It affirms his unchanging divine mission in that realm, mirroring the perpetual renewal of the Phoenix myth.
A continuous, multi-dimensional saving act happening everywhere.
Adapted perfectly to the conditions of each reality. It's an almost unimaginable, omnipresent redemption.
Okay, let's try to trace that process. You said it's recursive, like a cascade.
Yes, it's the most complex part. Think of it like this. When Christ undergoes his passion and death on any given level, he then descends to the immediately lower level.
Okay.
But that descent triggers something huge. The 3-day interval between his death and resurrection on that higher level. That period signifies the completion of a full cycle. And here's the mind-bending part. During those 3 days on the higher level, it recursively encompasses his entire salvific life conception, ministry, passion, death, and the 3-day period itself on all lower levels all the way down to hell.
Wait, hang on. So in the 3 days, he's dead on level 5, let's say. He's simultaneously living, dying, and rising again on levels 4, 3, 2, 1, and hell.
That's the staggering claim, an unbelievable act of divine multitasking, omnipresent sacrifice, all compressed into the higher levels 3 days.
Like a divine time compression or a master switch flipping for all lower levels simultaneously.
That's a good way to think about it. A divine time compression seems apt.
Okay. My brain hurts a little. Then what happens after those 3 days are up on the original level?
After the 3 days pass on, say, level 5, his resurrected form appears there on level 5, and importantly, his resurrected form now incorporates all salvific work accomplished on the lower levels. He essentially carries the redemption from all those realities below him.
Wow.
Then, 40 days later, comes the ascension. He rises into the next higher level, level 6 in our example. And crucially, the model states, in that higher level, level 6, a full 3-day cycle has already elapsed, ensuring a seamless continuation.
So there's no gap in the higher levels.
Right. Once he ascends to that higher level, he completes his divine ministry there and establishes his Catholic Church within that specific reality, level 6.
And this whole sequence, death, 3-day recursive resurrection cycle, 40 days, ascension repeats upwards.
Exactly. Repeated at every successive level upward until he reaches the topmost level at the right hand of God.
Goodness.
And at that apex, and through his continuous presence on every level simultaneously, he exercises supreme judgment over the living and the dead.
Its cosmic doesn't even begin to cover it. It transcends our linear understanding of time and space completely.
It really does. It paints a picture of a truly boundless, adaptable divine love, ensuring his redemptive work is perfectly active everywhere.
And then there's the time thing you mentioned earlier that adds another layer of, well, weirdness.
Oh yes, the relative time across levels.
Yeah.
Work posits that at each level, one day may be equivalent to 1,000 years on the immediately lower level.
1 day equals 1,000 years below.
As ordained by God's will, yes. Which gives you a sense of the almost unimaginable scale.
So that 3-day period on a higher level could encompass millennia of history on the levels below it.
Precisely. It allows that intricate, recursive process we just described to unfold in what feels like a short time from a higher perspective, while covering vast stretches of perceived time below.
It makes his simultaneous presence and action even more profound. Time itself is just part of this multi-layered divine design.
Exactly. It challenges our human-centric view of time and shows an infinite capacity for divine action across all of creation. #TagV. Implications for human salvation and judgment.
Okay, so we've got this incredibly complex cosmology. How does it all play out for, us, for the individual soul at the moment of death?
Well, the model aligns with tradition in that each soul is individually judged.
Right.
Souls found in a state of grace remain at their current level. They don't fall, they rest in the salvific embrace of Christ until the final general resurrection.
So they continue existing in their specific grace level reality, waiting, perhaps in purgation or peace, but stable.
That seems to be the idea, a continuation awaiting the final culmination.
But what about souls judged unworthy?
They descend to the lowest level, hell. But here's where work adds a unique, nuanced twist. Even in hell, they encounter the presence of Jesus Christ.
Christ is in hell. That's different from some traditional views of hell as total absence of God.
It is. It's not absence, but a specific, maybe agonizing form of his presence. And how he appears depends on the soul's faith during life.
Depends on their faith. How so?
It depends on the soul's faith in Jesus Christ's resurrection and faith in the Holy Ghost. If the soul had some faith, Christ may appear alive, perhaps as judge or reminder of lost grace. But if the soul had no such faith, then Christ appears as the pre-resurrected corpse of Jesus on the cross.
Oh, wow. That's a stark image.
Incredibly stark, a perpetual reminder of the rejected sacrifice. And furthermore, the Holy Ghost is not manifest unless that requisite faith is present.
So no comfort, no guidance from the Spirit if faith was absent.
Exactly. It paints this picture of damnation where you're still within Christ's omnipresent judgment, but experiencing him in a way directly tied to your own rejection.
A very personal hell defined by your own choices regarding faith.
Precisely. Experiencing his presence is ultimate alienation and consequence.
Now, with all this talk of levels and continuing life, the question of reincarnation must come up, right? Does falling to a lower level mean you get reborn there?
That's a crucial point, and Work is very firm here. He says, this model firmly denies the notion of reincarnation in the traditional sense.
Okay, so no cycles of rebirth in different bodies.
Definitely not. He explicitly distinguishes it from those philosophies. Instead, he states, each human soul lives one unique, complete life per level.
One life per level, so the falling and rising happens within that single existence.
Correct. The descent by sin and potential restoration through contrition, penance, and the Eucharist occur within a single existence. If you fall, you continue that same life in the new, harsher reality. It's not a do-over, it's an immediate consequence within your ongoing existence.
So it maintains the traditional idea of the finality of individual judgment for that life on that level.
Yes. It ensures each life and its choices within a specific reality are ultimate for that reality, keeping it distinct from cyclical rebirth ideas and rooted in a Christian framework. Hashtag tag C6. Broader reflections and engaging the discourse.
It's quite a structure Work has built, and he's open about its nature, isn't he? Acknowledging it's speculative.
Very much so. He calls it a speculative exploration, not official doctrine. He even notes all loose ends are not closed tight, and actively invites constructive feedback.
That's quite refreshing, actually, that openness.
It really is. It highlights the spirit of apologetics, engaging complex ideas, welcoming scrutiny, evolving understanding, humility in the face of mystery, even while proposing bold solutions.
And he has hopes this kind of thinking might stimulate more research within the church, using modern scientific theories.
Yes, he expresses a passionate hope that apologetics using out-of-box thinking, applying ideas from simulation theory or the many-world interpretation of quantum mechanics, could be challenging enough to stimulate research.
And he takes it further, proposing a Vatican College of Apologetics.
He does. With departments for each major religion, he sees it as a healthy response to the challenge posed by modern scientific worldviews, tracing back to Galileo.
How does he connect Galileo to this?
He argues that while Galileo's model is true in the limited rational materialist perceived information, divine theology offers a more fully complete truth, namely that the universe's ultimate center isn't the sun, but God's love of man's soul, that you, I, each person is, in a profound theological sense, the center.
Ah, so it's about understanding center in different ways scientifically versus theologically.
Exactly. He's arguing for a holistic approach where faith and reason enrich each other, where theology can integrate scientific discoveries rather than being threatened by them. Understanding that the soul, as the object of God's infinite love, holds a central place in the cosmic order.
His vision isn't just academic, though. He has some very strong words about the state of the church itself, doesn't he? Calls for reform.
Oh, yes. Very strong traditionalist viewpoints come through clearly. He hopes this kind of deeper understanding could lead to a more perfected Catholic Church. He suggests understanding missing truths, perhaps present in other sects, while also helping those sects see where their own views might be warped, incomplete, untrue, compared to a more perfected Catholic Church.
It sounds like a call for both internal strengthening and clearer dialogue.
It does, but it's coupled with a very direct, impassioned call for the Vatican to return to Jesus Christ's truer church.
And he names specific groups he sees as problematic.
He does. He calls for the repentance of all heretical modernists, communists, Freemasons, Satanists, and other Catholic haters and soul murderers. And he goes on to call for the removal of Satan from the Vatican, urging office holders to be true to their oaths and divinely guided again, freed from all sin.
Those are certainly bold and very critical statements, reflecting a deep concern from a traditionalist perspective.
Absolutely, a call for profound spiritual renewal and purification within the institution.
And naturally, a model this bold and the strong views tied to it. It sparks reactions, doesn't it?
Intense reactions. The source material includes a couple of comments that really show the spectrum of responses this kind of thinking provokes.
Right, let's look at those. There's one from the Blue Sky Maiden.
Yes. This commenter dismisses the whole multiverse idea quite colorfully as a quantum load of old toss.
Haha, okay. Not a fan then.
Definitely not. They draw on a different philosophy, emphasizing you are here and W, everything else is Maya, meaning illusion, while the Parabrahma is the all in all, the ultimate singular reality.
So, completely rejecting the idea of multiple realities as just illusion or distraction.
Exactly. And they go further, strongly criticizing any religion that has to construct imaginary hells and devils as inherently evil.
Mm.
They also question if Catholic theologians are even capable of valid interpretations or coherent thought. It's a total dismissal of the entire framework work uses.
Wow, okay, a very different perspective. And then there's Zippy.
Zippy comes from another angle, entirely a historical critical one. They ask, what would Jesus say about all of that if he happened to appear in 2025?
Provocative question.
And Zippy's answer is that the historical Jesus was scathingly critical of establishments and was simply executed as a common criminal by the Roman state. End of story.
So rejecting the supernatural elements entirely.
Completely. Zippy explicitly states the resurrection did not occur, could not have happened, and that Jesus could only have given commissions while alive, not after the resurrection, which of course did not occur.
Which, if you take that view, makes work's whole cosmology irrelevant.
Pretty much. If you dismiss the resurrection, the core event of Christian salvation, then a multi-layered cosmology built around Christ's recursive redemptive work across realities just doesn't compute.
These comments really do highlight the intense debates, don't they? Pushing boundaries, challenging core beliefs about history, reality, faith.
Absolutely. They remind us that for every speculative model, there are deeply held, often opposing viewpoints out there. It shows just how vast and varied the landscape of belief and skepticism really is. Hashtag outro.
Well, we have certainly navigated some deep and complex waters today with stevenwork's Jacob's Ladder Cosmology of the Gospels. It's a truly mind-bending, speculative apologetic from Jacob's Ladder as a literal hierarchy of grace.
To souls falling and rising across distinct realities through sin and sacraments.
And Christ's recursive, almost phoenix-like redemption across potentially infinite levels. It's an incredibly expansive vision.
It really forces you to reconsider how we understand truth in the sacred texts.
We saw how it tries to resolve godable differences by giving each account its own true ontological context.
While upholding inerrancy, denying traditional reincarnation, and affirming judgment, albeit with that unique portrayal of Christ's presence even in hell.
It's definitely an ambitious, out-of-the-box attempt to bridge ancient texts and modern questions.
It is, and this deep dive really asks you, the listener, to consider how far can the boundaries of theological, even scientific thought stretch when we're trying to reconcile profound truths? If divine truth can manifest uniquely across distinct realities, perfectly tailored to the grace levels of each, what does that imply? What does it suggest about the infinite adaptability of God's love? About the potential for understanding the universe in ways we're maybe only just beginning to imagine?
It definitely gives us a lot to ponder about reality, faith, and the endless possibilities for seeing the sacred texts in new ways. We hope this exploration has given you a fresh perspective, something to think about on what it means to be truly well-informed in this world full of complex ideas, where even foundational beliefs can be viewed through startling new lenses.